Picture this, it's 49 BC. You're standing on the bank of a pretty small river in Italy. But this isn't just any river. And the man next to you, Julius Caesar, is about to make a decision that will change the world forever. He's about to commit treason, and in doing so, he's going to bring the entire Roman Republic crashing down.
So if you believe the old historians, this is what was going through Caesar's head. He's thinking, okay, I can turn back now and face total political destruction back in Rome. Or I can cross this little bridge with my army and basically set the world on fire. I mean, the stakes don't get much higher than that, right? He knows this is his choice to make. Or maybe it wasn't, because right at that moment of hesitation, the story goes that something pretty weird happened.
Yeah, so the historian Suetonius tells this incredible story. He says that while Caesar is just agonizing over this decision, out of nowhere, this apparition appears. A figure of, quote, extraordinary size and beauty. And it's just playing a pipe. The soldiers all gather around to listen, and then bam, the figure snatches a trumpet from one of them, lets out this huge blast, and just marches right across the river. Talk about a sign from the gods, right? It was a green light.
And seeing this, Caesar apparently says, all right, let's go where the gods and my enemies are leading me. And then he drops one of the most famous lines in all of history. Ictia alia est. The die is cast. That's it. Decision made. But, this whole legendary story, this dramatic moment of one man's choice, it kind of hides a much bigger and honestly a much more interesting question.
I mean, really think about this for a second. It wasn't just Caesar crossing a river. He had about 5,000 men with him. Why on earth would an entire army of Roman soldiers willingly follow their general into an act of treason? Why would they agree to march on their own home, making every single one of them a traitor to the state? The real answer, believe me, has nothing to do with a magical piper. It's way more practical, and it points to a huge crack running right through the heart of the Roman Republic.
And let's be super clear about what was at stake. There was this law in Rome, and it was a big one. No general, under any circumstances, was allowed to bring his army into Italy. The Rubicon River? That was the borderline. So crossing it with your army wasn't just breaking a rule, it was a straight-up declaration of war. Every single soldier who took that first step across the bridge was committing treason. No two ways about it.
So how did he pull it off? How does one guy get thousands of soldiers to betray their own country? Well, to figure that out, we've got to rewind a bit and look at how the Roman army itself had totally transformed.
Okay, so check this out. The old Roman army, the one we think of from the early Republic, was basically a citizen militia. You were a farmer with some land, and when Rome was in trouble, you picked up a sword to defend your home and your state. Simple. But by Caesar's day, totally different ballgame. Thanks to something called the Marian reforms, the army was now full of professional career soldiers. These guys often didn't own any land. Many weren't even from Italy. So their loyalty, it wasn't to some abstract idea of the Senate back in Rome. It was to the general who was right there with them. The guy who paid their salary and promised them a retirement plan.
And look, this didn't happen overnight. We're talking about a slow burn, a cultural shift that had been going on for about 80 years. It started with generals like Marius and Sulla. Bit by bit, that old bond between a soldier and the Republic was just dissolving. And in its place, a new, much stronger bond was forming, the one between a soldier and his general.
So let's put ourselves in the sandals of a Roman soldier for a minute. Your entire life's plan, your whole future, rests on one guy, your general. Your job is to serve him for decades, survive battle after battle, and just hope to God he keeps winning. Why? Because only a successful, powerful general could march into the Senate and get you the one thing you signed up for, a little plot of land to retire on. Your fate and his were completely intertwined. And right here is the crucial moment. After 8 years of absolutely brutal warfare in Gaul, where Caesar's army won victory after victory, Caesar goes to the Senate and says, okay, time to pay my guys. We need that retirement land. And the Senate, who are full of his political enemies, just said no. Flat out refused. Now, from the soldiers' perspective, this was everything. This was the ultimate betrayal. In their minds, they weren't the traitors turning on Rome. Rome had just turned on them.
So you see, the whole system was broken, creating the perfect conditions for a civil war. But it was Caesar's personal leadership that really lit the fuse. His men weren't just following him for a paycheck. They were absolutely devoted to him.
Think about it. They'd spent 8 years together in the trenches in Gaul. Caesar wasn't some general sitting in a comfy tent miles away. He marched with them. He suffered with them. He probably even knew their names. On top of that, he was a certified military genius who just kept leading them to victory, and he made sure they were paid well, even if it came out of his own pocket. So when the time came to make a choice at that river, who would you pick? The politicians back in Rome who just stiffed you? Or the guy who had been bleeding right alongside you for almost a decade? It's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it?
There's a great quote from a Reddit user, of all places, that just nails it. They said, Caesar's soldiers never actually fought for the Republic. They fought for Caesar under the Republic's banner. And that's exactly it. By this point, Caesar was their country. He was their government, their bank, and their only real shot at a decent future. The Republic was just a flag. Caesar was the man.
Okay, so I think we have our answer. The army's loyalty came down to a broken political system and Caesar's incredible leadership. Case closed, right? Well, what about that story we started with? The Piper, the divine sign. What if that whole thing wasn't exactly history, but maybe a little bit of Hollywood? Yeah, remember that spooky Piper at the river? It's an amazing story, but here's the thing. Only one historian, Suetonius, actually tells it. Other guys who were writing about it, even some who were actually there, they don't mention it at all, not a word. So, where did this fantastic tale come from? The answer might not be in a history scroll, but on a stage. See, Romans absolutely loved plays about their own history. It was a whole genre called the fabula praetextatata. Think of them like the original historical dramas or biopics. And just like today, they weren't afraid to jazz things up a bit, add some dramatic flair to make it a better show. Now get this. Here's a coin that was minted by one of Caesar's close allies, a guy named Pansa. And who's that on the coin? It's the god Pan. And what was Pan famous for? Ding, 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 playing the pipes. The connection gets even deeper. Pansa's own family claimed to be descended from Pan. So, let's connect the dots. A larger-than-life figure, playing a pipe for shepherds and soldiers. I mean, that sounds an awful lot like the god Pan, doesn't it? He was a super common character in these popular plays.
Which brings us to a pretty wild question. What if the Piper at the Rubicon never really happened? What if it was actually a scene from a play maybe even paid for by Caesar's buddy, Pansa, to make this act of treason look like it was ordered by the gods themselves? I mean, talk about brilliant political propaganda, right? Turning history into a hit show.
And this idea isn't as crazy as it might sound. Even the ancient historian Tacitus basically said that when it comes to huge events and famous people, the facts can get a little flexible. The truth gets shaped by emotion, by storytelling, until what you're left with isn't pure fact anymore, but a legend.
So, at the end of the day, we've got two completely different stories explaining the same exact moment in history. You've got the legend, and you've got the much messier reality. And honestly, you need to understand both to really get what was happening to Rome.
Let's break it down. The reality is that a broken political and economic system pushed an army into the arms of its general. The reality is that Caesar was an amazing commander who earned their loyalty. That's the complex truth. And then you have the legend, a dramatic, God-sent signal at a river. It's simple, it's powerful, and it's a way better story to tell your kids, right? And that kind of leaves us with a final question to chew on. That story of the Piper is so powerful precisely because it takes a really complicated, messy situation and turns it into this clean moment of destiny. It makes you wonder, whenever we tell stories about our own past, are we acting like historians, just sticking to the facts? Or are we really acting more like playwrights, looking for the best possible story?